In the name of God, the Holy and Undivided Trinity. Amen. Today's Gospel lesson is probably one of the most familiar to all of us. Throughout history, the image of the Good Shepherd has been repeated countless times in stained glass windows and in paintings. It's been recounted in songs and stories. We refer to Jesus as the Good Shepherd in our prayers. I'm reminded here of the prayer in the funeral liturgy found in our UCC Book of Worship. Acknowledge, we humbly pray, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, and son or daughter of your own redeeming. Jesus tells his disciples, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. It's no accident that images such as these were very often on Jesus' mind and in his words. It was deeply rooted in his heritage and culture, and like images of fish and fishermen, something that was part of the everyday world of the people who heard him. Abraham, the father of the nation, was the keeper of great flocks. Moses was tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro when God called him into a special service. The first two kings of Israel, Saul and David, were shepherds before they became king. The imagery of the shepherd was also prevalent in the literature of the day. The 23rd Psalm is frequently referred to as the Shepherd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. When Isaiah spoke of the coming of the Messiah, he worded it by saying, he will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather his lambs into his arms. Yes, the tradition of the shepherd was very much part of the heritage of Christ. We of today, though, are sometimes at a disadvantage when we read about shepherds and sheep. In this part of the world, we don't see sheep a lot. We're more familiar with cows around here. Some friends of mine in Clintonville, my hometown in Wisconsin, raise sheep on their farm. But mostly we learn about sheep pretty much second and third hand. One of the things that seems to happen in sermons about this passage, and we've all heard them before, in other similar passages about sheep, is that we, the listeners, are immediately told about the rather negative qualities that sheep have. They're stubborn, they're not easily managed, sometimes downright mean, and not too bright. The connection is immediately made between sheep and those of us who follow the Good Shepherd, and we come off not looking so good. Well, in his book, The Holy Land, John Kelman tells the story that puts the whole shepherd-sheep thing into better perspective. Remember that just before the gospel passage that we read today, Jesus says, I am the gate for the sheep. I have come in order that you might have life. Life in all its fullness. Kelman recounts an experience that he had. A shepherd near Hebron, when asked why the sheep pen there had no gate, answered quite simply, I am the gate. He meant that at night, when the sheep gathered within the circular stone wall of the enclosure, he lay down in its open entrance to sleep, so that no sheep might stray from its shelter without waking him, and no ravenous beast might enter but across his own body. He made a living gate of his own person and barred the way into the pen with his own body. The shepherd literally lives with and guards his flock, protecting it against anyone or anything that might threaten it. To a shepherd of Jesus' day, the sheep were not just a measure of the shepherd's wealth, they were the shepherd's wealth. They had great value to him and his family. Sure, they smell, they're unruly, they're hard to control, they bite, they wander off, but they are important and valuable to the shepherd. We remember the parable of the lost sheep, where the shepherd there goes to find the one lost sheep from the 100 in his flock. He searches high and low and does not quit until he finds it, even though he has 99 other ones. The sheep are important. And if we continue the analogy that we are the sheep of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, that means that we, as the sheep who belong to Christ, who know him, who hearken to his voice, who follow him, well, that means that we are important too. But this lesson from the gospel today is really about the shepherd and not about the sheep. It compares the good shepherd to the hired hand, the shepherd who really has no skin in the game, you might say. The hireling really doesn't care about the sheep at all. If one goes missing, well, what's he supposed to do about it? He gets paid the same, whether he comes back from the fields with 100 sheep or with 99. He has no sense of responsibility to the sheep, and if a wolf or other predator shows up, he's not going to risk his neck for someone else's animals. How many times in our own lives has our well-being been entrusted to such a hireling? How many times have we ourselves misplaced our trust in such people? They might be friends, they might be co-workers, they might even be relatives. We place our trust and confidence in them only to have that trust shattered. And in truth, if we're honest, how many times in our own lives have we been the ones who failed someone else? Whether we intend it or not, sometimes we do fall short of what others expect of us, and certainly far short of what we might expect of ourselves. We, like sheep, have gone astray, everyone to his own way. That is, I think, one of the symptoms of what we call human experience. And we don't need to dwell on it, and we don't need to obsess over it, but we do need to recognize it and try to do better next time. This is why our Good Shepherd has taken our burdens onto himself. This is why God's grace is so important. This is why at the end of the day, ours is not a cry of pain or despair, but a song of praise and thanksgiving. The Good Shepherd is there for us. The Good Shepherd enfolds us in his arms. The Good Shepherd protects us, sometimes from ourselves. And the Good Shepherd gives us an excellent example to follow. There are three big ways in which the Good Shepherd differs from that hired hand. The first is commitment. The Good Shepherd, like the shepherd in Kelman's book, when, and the lesson reads that way, when, not if, when a wolf or poacher shows up, the Good Shepherd stands his ground to protect the sheep. One of the big problems of this day and age is lack of commitment. When things get tough, the tough don't get going, the tough just leave. You've heard the phrase, I'm sure, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Commitment sticks around when the wolf shows up at the door. Commitment is digging in your heels and standing your ground when things get unpleasant. Commitment is not comfortable sometimes. In fact, it's probably not comfortable very often. And commitment means that sometimes you're not going to be very popular. Jesus had the opportunity to run away, like the hired hand, and save his own skin. But instead, he chose to save ours. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. The second difference between the hired hand and the Good Shepherd is care. Jesus tells us the hired man, since he is not the shepherd of the sheep, do not belong to him, abandons the sheep and runs away as soon as he sees a wolf coming. In short, the hired man simply does not care about the sheep. He might stick around for a while, if only to get paid, or because it's his duty, or what he's supposed to do. But his motivation eventually becomes clear, and we can see whether or not he's the genuine article. Jesus is very interested in our motivations for doing the things we do. The Good Shepherd is motivated by love. The hired man is not. We can do lots of good things, quote unquote, but they don't impress God at all unless they're done with the right motive. Our motives are the spiritual catalysts that drive us. People might see our outward good deeds, but God sees into our hearts and sees just what those catalysts are. God cannot be fooled. The Good Shepherd is motivated by love. He cares. And we are called to go and do likewise. The third element is that of connections. The hired hand has no relationship with the sheep, but the Good Shepherd does. I am the Good Shepherd, I know my own, and they know me. Jesus came to us and dwelt among us to make a personal connection with us. And he wants us to make a personal connection with him. To get to know him for who he is. And not just at a superficial level. We sometimes get a little queasy, maybe, when we think about making that personal connection with God and with Jesus. We might even get a little embarrassed and self-conscious. And when you get right down to it in our own lives, how many people do we know of whom we could say, I know them and they know me? In our Facebook day and age, when people we do not know and may never meet somehow wind up on our friends list, the idea of real connections between ourselves and other people, much less between ourselves and God, seems an impractical goal. And yet there are people who are very near and dear to us, people we truly do know, and who truly do know us. And we have those relationships because we have spent time together with these people. We have talked with them, shared with them, laughed and cried with them. That is the relationship God craves to have with us. And it is simple to do. The key is spend time with your God in prayer. Read God's diary, the Bible. Everything you need to know to get to know God is right in there.